So, happy full moon. And for this full moon, we have a small but 5-card reading to go through. And I'm going to see if I can't channel something new and something that we might just have seen with my lovely ladies in my community group. There they are. But only for me to see. So this is the first card that came out, and this is the 10 of Cups that's reversed. And so there's a story coming up in this full moon for us to question why we haven't got a great relationship with that which brings us the most love, the most joy, and the most happiness. What is it that's blocking these stories inside of us? What's blocking the feeling and the knowing and the manifestation of a full, happy, ever after, joy-like experience in our lives? What is missing? What is missing for us, and why are we creating this missingness? And then, so when I was doing this reading, this was the first card that popped out on its own. Then this whole pack of 4 cards popped out together, and I was like, really, 4 cards? No, we don't have to have 4 cards. And I got the message that yes, we do have to have 4 cards. So here are the 4 cards. I'm going to spread them out in a fan, and then we'll talk about them. I'll throw on YouTube, I'll throw up a picture of this reading. So these are the 4 cards that we're going to talk about, and they all popped up together, and so we're going to read them all together. There's several dynamics that are really important to see. The only 2 upright cards in this reading are the 5 of Pentacles and the Hermit, who is actually shining his light on the other 4 cards of this reading. So these stories are kind of clear, and then there's some twisted stories which are personality traits and qualities inside of us, being members of the court of the King and the Queen here, who are reversed, and the King is the King of Wands and the Queen of Pentacles. So let's take a look at this reading and see what it can bring for us. Take a deep breath with me and see if we can pull this something out of the hat. So we're asking the question about why are we not bringing in the manifestation of an amazing amount of love and happiness in our life? Why are we resisting this truth, this potential that's inside of ourselves, this potential that's inside of the world? What is it that's making us resist this story, that's making us not experience the manifestation of being in love with ourselves, being in love with life, being in love with everybody around us? What is this story? And so there's this obvious story of unworthiness and a lack of self-worth and an impoverished self. This is our impoverished past, if you like, because there's a certain amount of past nature of this, because the Hermit is that part of us that lights up a journey or a path that we have already been through. And so this whole reading is a little bit about our past, but it's not necessarily our past, because we definitely hold on to our past, so we'll make it present. And yet part of the message of this is to look at how our past has manifested our sense of lack, our sense of unworthiness, and our sense of being impoverished, being not good enough in some way, shape, or form. And we all have this. We all have different ways and different programs that are telling us inside of our subconscious mind, you're not good enough. You're not beautiful enough, you're not intelligent enough, you're not clever enough, you're not capable enough, you don't deserve this. You're not healthy enough. You're not strong enough. You're not. And all of these voices will come out and be triggered by life. And part of these voices are what is making it difficult for us to really be in love with our lives, making it difficult for us to really own the joy that's there for us to take. But we kind of don't believe in it. We kind of think that maybe I don't deserve it, because the 5 is definitely this feeling of lacking, of deserving something. So this 10 is so wonderful, so amazing, so full of joy. There can be different reasons why this 10, or why we don't feel like we deserve it. One of those could be that, hey, look at the world. The world is full of so much turmoil and poverty and problems and ill health and disease, and what makes me deserve it and somebody else not. And we'll have that fear of the guilt privilege story that can come up, that can be a blockage to really embracing the true love in our life. And really, we can't help anybody step outside of poverty and this impoverished unworthiness unless we do first. And so this is the biggest story here. It doesn't help that sometimes inside of this world there are these kings running around showing the arrogance of wanting to narcissistically own all of life and feel empowered by their own sense of success and worthiness. And we might look at some of the more wealthy, obvious contrast type people in this world who have everything, who have taken from this world and maybe manipulated this world into gaining a sense of power and success. And we might avoid success because it looks quite ugly in this type of king, and it might look ugly inside of our own king, inside of ourselves, because this reversed king can be the part of us that will be too weary of our own power to create success, be too afraid to step up and be the leader of our own lives and really control our lives or march ourselves into what might be a more successful, loving, full of joy type lifestyle. We might be afraid of doing that because it doesn't always look easy, and it's going to involve some changes and some transformation, and we might not feel very comfortable with change and transformation, and we might repress that king inside of us who's the king of transformation, who can make anything happen, who can make magic happen. And he does so with this higher, when he's the right way up, he does so with this higher integrity and purpose of being this inspirational light for the world, this inspirational light for this world that the hermit inside of us is showing is what we need to be. And yet we'll avoid our fire, we'll avoid the success inside of ourselves, sometimes because the examples of that success are a little bit scary. The examples seem so different than what we might be feeling is unworthy inside of us, that we don't believe in it. We don't believe that we can create that. We don't believe that we can step out of our old stories into different ones. We just feel confined and restricted to this old pattern of lack, this old pattern of unworthiness, because those voices are too strong, and our parents and our grandparents and maybe a lot of our inherited line has some lack of self-worth inside of them, and it's it's then difficult. And this might not even be like success on a material level. This is success on a love level. And so we may even be wealthy. We may be even be a successful king on some levels, but we still will feel this lack of joy and this lack of ability to wake up and really be in love with life. And because we don't deserve that. We don't deserve that amazing joy. That amazing joy will elude us in some way, and it will escape us. And this queen comes up to speak about how we have this tendency to be a little bit over attached to things in the material world, and she will reflect our lack by the obvious, hey, look around you and see what you haven't got, and look around you and hold on to what you have, because if you let go of what you have, then you could end up with nothing. And so there's a fear in this queen that stops us from letting go of old habits, letting go of old work programs, letting go of old ways of working, ways of interacting with money, ways of interacting with our health, with our bodies. And we'll just keep hold of these old patterns and these old programs, because at least they've kept us with a minimal amount of safety. And yet that king doesn't want a minimal amount of safety. That king is that part of us that wants to break out of those bonds of the old levels of what might be seen as good and what might be seen as joy and love, and really dare to go to places of sharing himself, sharing his love, sharing his truth on a much higher level. And we can't do that unless we drop the fear. Sometimes we have to let go of the safety net in order to experience what it is to fly. And we've done this in different ways in our past, and maybe it's something that's easier for us to do when we're younger, in a more teenage dynamic where we feel immortal and unbreakable. And maybe it's something that we've never done, something that we've always been afraid to do, to break free from old stories, to break free from old ways of interacting with relationships, with work stories, with job stories. Fear of letting go of the things that we might give importance to, like our house, our possessions, our car, our things. And sometimes we have to let go of those things in order to sometimes really dare to reach out. First of all, we've got to own the fact that maybe a lot of what's directing our path and moving us through life is this question of lack, question of poverty, this impoverished dynamic. Maybe that's the stimulus that's actually motivating us to do our actions, which I'm sure it can be like a fire up the arse sometimes, where we actually feel a little bit motivated when we feel impoverished and when we feel like things are lacking in our life. But we can't hold on to that lack and move forward at the same time. We can't experience the abundance of love if we are feeling unworthy. Those two vibrations don't mix. And so we have to truly own our unworthiness, see it very clearly, recognize how it's directing us in our lives. Recognize how that unworthiness is blocking our ability to step into real change and real transformation, and how it is causing us to feel over-attached and scared to let go of the small amount of life that we may have accumulated and that may make us feel safe. And to see if we can't light a path for others in this world by walking a path that is aligned with believing that we deserve this level of love and this level of happiness and this level of joy. Because it starts with that belief. It starts with the ability to close your eyes, to take a few deep breaths and recognize how much or how important it is to love the world, love everything in it with all of its chaos and all of its dirtiness and all of its madness, and celebrate the connection that comes from wanting to love the world, and celebrate that connection that comes from really wanting to celebrate how amazing life can be without guilt, without fear of comparisons, just because we can. Amen to that. Have a wonderful full moon, everyone. Love to hear your comments.